Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, peace be upon us all. Can you hear me clearly? If so, please send an emoji in the chat box below. Good morning to all our friends and attendees from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. Welcome to the online workshop, Embracing Shared Heritage Through Performing Arts. As part of Southeast Asia, I believe you're familiar with the expression tak kenal tak sayang, or if you don't know, you don't love. So allow me to introduce myself. Hello, my name is 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀. I'm a visual artist and a researcher based in Jakarta, serving as a host. Everybody could turn their cameras on so that we can get to know each other better. And please kindly be reminded to fill out the attendance sheet in the chat box below. Okay, so we would like to welcome our distinguished guest. First, representatives from the UNESCO Regional Office in Jakarta, Ms. Maki Katsuno Hayashikawa and Ms. 𝗏𝗏, along with their staff. Second, representatives from the Temasek Foundation, Mr. James Chan, Senior Director Programs of Temasek Foundation, along with their staff. Third, this morning's speaker, Dr. 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗿𝗀, Mr. 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀, PhD, Mr. 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀, and Dr. 𝗪𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀. Fourth, representatives from universities and arts education institutions in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. Fifth, representatives from arts and cultural organizations in India, Malaysia, and Singapore, and performers participating in this event. And of course, we'd like to extend our warm welcome to the practitioners and art students from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, who will be part of this entire program. As an introduction to this series program, so the activity is the beginning and launching of the Embracing Heritage Through Performing Arts Intercultural Collaboration Skills Development Program, organized by UNESCO Jakarta with the support of Temasek Foundation. This program aims to seek intercultural competencies among performing arts professionals and students, sharing shared narratives, resilience, and innovation across borders. Spanning from 2025 to 2027, the program supports capacity building, cross-cultural exchange, and collaborative creation, culminating in a festival in Jakarta that showcases the regional's heritage through co-created programs. This year, there are 4 activities planned until early 2026. The first was a base survey involving all performing art practitioners and performing arts students from 3 countries who filled out the forms that we've distributed. The purpose of the forms is so that we can get an idea of the existing art performances in these 3 countries. The second activity is this event. Today's is the kick-off workshop. The third activity will be a public webinar on cultural heritage, which is planned for the end of October or early November. The last activity will be a face-to-face workshop for performing artists in Indonesia, which will be continued by performing artists in Malaysia and Singapore. In late 2026 and early 2027, there will be plans to hold a collaborative performance in 30 artists from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. So that's a brief overview of the program, and we hope that our friends in the performing arts and performing arts students who have joined us will continue to be with us throughout the program. Now it's time to begin our event. We will start with the opening remark. Let us welcome Ms. Maki Katsuno Hayashikawa, Director and Representative of the UNESCO Office in Jakarta, to give remarks. Ms. Maki, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Honorable representatives from the Temasek Foundation, representatives from the Ministry of Culture of Indonesia, lecturers, students, artists, and art organizations from the 3 countries, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, the esteemed members of the government, civil society, and colleagues at the National Commission for UNESCO. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang. Good morning and a very warm welcome to the virtual launch of Embracing Shared Heritage Through the Performing Arts, our renewed effort to celebrate Southeast Asia's rich cultural traditions. Allow me to begin by extending UNESCO's appreciation to our partner, Temasek Foundation, for the generous support making this program possible. Honorable guests, esteemed colleagues, and fellow artists. Southeast Asia's performing arts and associate crafts carry centuries of heritage and are deeply tied to national identities. Yet, despite their vast potential to drive intercultural dialogue, artists continue to face challenges: limited mobility and cross-border collaboration, financial constraints, and insufficient institutional support. Addressing these issues, UNESCO and Temasek Foundation launched the Embracing Performing Arts program into cultural collaboration skills development. This initiative will strengthen intercultural and collaborative skills of performing artists and artisans engaged in related craftsmanship, such as mask making, costume design, and puppetry in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. We are also inviting students of performing arts from universities to join the discussions, expanding the perspectives and network. Our baseline survey has already engaged over 400 beneficiaries, including artists and students from the 3 countries. Here, I would like to recognize our partners, ARS Management, ERTI Research, and Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, for their invaluable role in connecting us with these communities. Over the next 18 months, the program will focus on 3 key aspects: capacity building, offering virtual and in-person workshops, a cross-cultural exchange and co-creation, enabling collaboration among artists across borders, and third, marketing, art sessions, academia, artists associations, and all relevant stakeholders. Together, we can provide opportunities for meaningful collaboration and co-creation. I am confident that this initiative with cultural practitioners to celebrate our shared heritage and advance cultural diversity across the region. Let us harness the power of performing arts to deepen mutual understanding, respect, and solidarity. I wish the program every success and look forward to the positive impact it will bring.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maki, for your valuable remarks. Now we will proceed to the introduction program session, which will be presented by 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗵𝗂, Chief of the Cultural Sector, UNESCO Office, Jakarta. We now invite Ms. 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗵𝗂 to be on the stage.
Very good morning, friends and colleagues from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, and particularly our friends from Temasek Foundation. So let me take a few minutes to share the background of our initiative and what you can expect from this program. Actually, I have prepared a little slide, and I wonder if it's on the screen. Okay, here it is. Thank you very much. So, as already mentioned by Maki, our focus is on intercultural collaboration skills for performing arts from 3 countries. Next slide, please. As you know, Southeast Asia is incredibly rich in traditional performing arts tradition, performed in religious rituals, community celebrations, and popular entertainment. And it is impossible to imagine the region without music and performing arts. What is even more beautiful is that while each country has its own traditions, many practices come from a shared history, shaped by long-standing cultural connections. This shared history gives the tradition even deeper meaning and value. Yet, this sector was among the hardest hit by the pandemic. The artists present here would know very well. And then, unlike the music industry, which quickly moved online, Many performing arts are not easily adopted to digital formats. Next slide, please. For artists, opportunities to perform and gain public exposures are essential. Without opportunities to perform, there's little motivation for you to improve or innovate. And without innovation, the quality of performance would decline. And the lower quality means less public interest, which in turn makes it harder to justify government support. And with limited support, opportunities remain scarce, creating a vicious circle that we need to break. While we cannot solve every challenge, our project aims to enhance the quality of productions by artists from the 3 countries, increase public visibility for their work, and do this by harnessing the power of collaboration and co-creation rooted in our shared cultural heritage. Shared heritage, dialogue, and collaboration are the key ideas of this program. We believe they will inspire your creativity, strengthen your work solidarity, and help promote your art through co-branding. Next slide, please. We aim to reach 180 artists and related artisans as direct beneficiaries of this program, and around 300 performing arts students as secondary beneficiaries through public webinars. Next slide, please. So to recap, our planned activities include baseline survey. We've already started a survey to understand the current situation, collaborations among the 3 countries. The survey will continue for an additional week, I think until the first week of October. So if you have not yet responded, we encourage you to share your input. And your response will guide the design of the training workshops that will follow. Then the activity is virtual kickoff workshop. This session, where we are gathered now, is another important step. How the performing arts sector in the 3 countries can grow through collaborations around shared heritage. And I thank all the experts present here today for contributing your views. Then the next activity is at the national level. Based on the training needs identified from the survey, we will organize at least 2 webinars and 1 workshop in each country, focusing on shared heritage and co-creation. Then the highlight of the program is collab action. We will select 30 artists, 10 from each country, through an open call. They will join a residency program to create at least 2 collaborative productions. And finally, the last step is the festival showcase. These co-creations will be presented at the Jakarta Arts Festival in November 2026. And as a bonus for the most promising artists, we also plan to help them connect with international festivals and other marketing opportunities. Next slide, please. And this is the last one. So through this process, we want to empower performing artists with a stronger sense of historical value of their traditions, inspire new creativity and innovative products that bring more visibility, and finally strengthen the performing arts as a dynamic sector that contributes to ASEAN's collective image and branding of unity in diversity. Getting to know you better and continuing this journey together. Together, let's turn our shared heritage into shared strengths, and your creativity is our vision's best voice to the world. Thank you very much. Terima kasih, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Ms. 𝗪𝗫𝗀, for your very informative presentation. With that, all attendees have gained a clear understanding of the program. Now we will proceed to the main session, which is the presentation from our speakers. Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin the presentation session, let's enjoy two virtual performance art from Indonesia and Malaysia. Who's excited? Please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat box. Our first performance is titled 𝗪𝗪𝗀 and will be presented by Fania as Zahra Ramadana, a dance major from the Indonesian Institute of the Arts, or EC Jakarta. Allow me to read the synopsis. This work is inspired by the traditional performance of Reok Wayang Bantul, in which the character, Gendruwo Liri, is a figure whose presence has now become rare in contemporary Reok performances. Motivated by this, the dance seeks to reintroduce and embody the character's appearance on stage and have adapted in this work, such as the design of the mask and the musical arrangement. The costume, on the other hand, remained true to its original form, traditionally made from either white burlap or brown bagur fabric. Let's welcome 𝗪𝗪𝗀.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing performance. Thank you, Fanya, for your amazing work. Now, we will watch the next performance, which is Fragments of 𝗏𝗏, performed by 𝗧𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀. He's a performer, musician, and digital producer with 5 Arts Center, and a featured performer in Fragments of 𝗏𝗏. Allow me to read the synopsis. For this virtual kickoff, audiences will experience an excerpt of the Fragments of 𝗏𝗏 by 5 Arts Center, documentary theater work with original music that revisits and reimagines the legendary 15th century warrior Hang Tuah, exploring how his myth continues to shape ideas of loyalty, identity, and power in Malaysia. The performance is to be staged in Kyoto Experiment this coming October. Let's welcome Fragments of 𝗏𝗏.
Hello, my name is 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I am an actor, performer, and musician. Recently, I was in a theatre performance called Fragments of 𝗏𝗏 that we staged in KLPAC, and we will be soon taking it to Kyoto Experiment Festival. Fragments of 𝗏𝗏 is a documentary theatre piece with original music and songs in it. It imagines the figure of Hang Tuah. Hang Tuah is a 15th century warrior whose story still echoes today, shaping how we think about loyalty, identity, and power in Malaysia. And for the past 3 years, I've been working with the director 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 and 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗀滬𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 the memories and what he might mean in both history and present moment. And instead of trying to give one fixed version of the story, Fragments of Tuah is more like a collage, pulling from all kinds of sources, like school books, songs, political slogans, even half-remembered stories and forgotten histories. Through performance and music, we're asked, what does loyalty mean today, and what has been silenced in how we tell our history, and who gets to decide which myths we hold onto. And I will be performing a song from the show. The song is called 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀. During rehearsal time, how the song came about, during rehearsal time, I want to present a song that maybe sits in a timeline before the kingdom Malacca was established, and the song is called Langkah Suka.
Anak sulung yang disanjung tak berapa cerdik, tapi perangai molek. Walau kata mak dia sakit, setiap malam dia menjerit. Langkah suka si permata, jauh di kaki, dekat di dada. Sang manikam, jago budak taman, Hindustan, tapi terlepas pandang. Bukan tak berguna, hanya tak dipilih. Setiap malam manika jerit. Langkah suka Sri Permata, jauh di kaki, dekat di dada. Langkah Sri Permata, jauh di kaki, dekat di dada. Tangannya dingin, matanya tajam. Dia menunggu, dia menyala di hulu utara. Sebelum segala bersamping sutera, debu melayang. Langkah suka 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗲𝗀, jauh di kaki, dekat di dada.
Thank you, Faik. That is such a beautiful performance. So before we continue to the next session, let's take a group photo together. Please ensure all participants turn their cameras on. Okay, cool. Let's take a group photo together. I think we have some slides over here, so please stay on pose. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, oh, we still have some cameras who are not on? Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next. Okay, we're waiting some participants to turn their cameras on. Thank you. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next slide. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Okay. Some participants may turn their cameras on, please. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, 3. Next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next. 1, 2, 3. Next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we've got everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the group picture. Okay, next we will move into the presentation session with our speakers from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. But before we get to know them, let's begin with our first presentation, the introductory session on shared heritage with Dr. 𝗘𝗺𝗀𝗪𝗀. I will read a brief profile. Dr. 𝗘𝗺𝗀𝗪𝗀 is a performance, education, research, and advocacy figure from Hawaii, USA. She holds a doctorate in Southeast Asian Studies from the National University of Singapore, a Master of Fine Arts in Theater and Dance, and Bachelor of Education from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. As a contemporary dancer, she performed internationally as a full-time member of the Riri Woodbury Dance Company in the USA. Currently Dean of the Faculty of Interdisciplinary Practices at Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, University of the Arts Singapore, Dr. 𝗘𝗺𝗀𝗪𝗀 continues to transcend boundaries by initiating interdisciplinary art salons, curating platforms such as Interspace, and leading the BA Honors Performance Making Program. In all her roles, Dr. Cariño remains dedicated to advancing performance making as a transformative practice and forging connections across disciplines, cultures, and communities. Dr. Karen Cariño, can you hear us clearly?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for that
Great.
wonderful introduction.
The stage is yours, please.
Thank you. And let's come to the first slide, please. Just waiting. Performing Southeast Asia, intercultural collaboration as shared heritage. And that is the topic of my introduction today. And let us begin. Next slide. The performing arts in Southeast Asia embody our shared heritage. And what I'm about to show you is one way we share our heritage. You will notice in the video, various heritages being shared. And I will talk over the video, and would you please start it? Thank you. This collaboration is between the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts and Kulintan Ensemble. It's choreographed by Dr. 𝗘𝗺𝗃𝗀𝗃, who is a Filipino, in collaboration with composer Pamela Costis, also Filipino. But other composers and musicians are from other countries and ethnicities, and so are the dancers. They are from other countries and ethnicities, including China, Singapore, and Indonesia. While the content is Filipino, the collaboration of different cultures come together to exchange and to learn and respect the culture of the Philippines. So in this sense, Filipino culture is preserved, but it is shared through dance and music. This is our shared heritage. So the dance consists of Filipino, but also Western traditions of ballet and contemporary, while the music remains the Filipino. Next slide, please. Interculturalism. It embodies complex and multi-layered conceptions of ethnicity, community, heritage, and culture. It emerges through processes of synthesis, producing forms of cultural hybridity. Next. Interculturalism in Southeast Asia's history. It is not a new concept. The contact of indigenous cultures with foreign cultures is part of our long history. Interculturalism has been embedded in artistic practices where the integration of one culture form with another emerged in the performing arts, music, dance, and theater in Southeast Asia with the establishment of Indianized kingdoms, bringing Mahayana Buddhism and Hinduism. Next. So in the Borobudur Stupa reliefs, 𝗘𝗺𝗪𝗀𝗃, an Asian culture critic, contends that there has been evidence of interculturalism in traditional dance forms. And Prambanan is Indian. Both monuments have many features of indigenous Javanese and Indian traditions, forming a unique synthesis. Most of the reliefs depict the postures of Indian classical dance. Alongside the dancers are bearded figures who appear to be directing the performance. These have been interpreted as Indian Brahmins invited to the Javanese courts who, along with other duties, taught Indian dance techniques. The reliefs also reveal many local features of the culture. For example, some dance themes have been interpreted as depicting purely indigenous traditions. Next slide. So further to interculturalism is this concept called localization. Historian Oliver Walters used localization to explain Southeast Asia's purposeful and discriminating aptitude to make sense, to make local sense of this through something that is foreign. Another historian, Craig Reynolds, supports Walters, calling it Southeast Asian will, or the capacity of Southeast Asian societies to shape change. The emergence and ongoing evolution of Southeast Asia's distinctive traditional forms identified apart from South Asia and East Asia illustrate the notion of localization. Examples of Southeast Asian dance, as well as other performing art forms that were produced through localization, include Legong, Wayang Orang from Indonesia, Lakon Kabak, Boran from Cambodia, Lakon Phai Nai and Mak Boy from Thailand, and Mak Yong from Malaysia, amongst other forms. Next. So interculturalism in Southeast Asia today. Architect and scholar William Lim posited that local agency has evolved into a new regional consciousness. As Southeast Asians, we can be ourselves in search of our modernity. Increased communication and mobility have expanded the creative potential of cultural intersections and hybridity. Banerjee, an academic and researcher known for his work in intellectual property rights and its implications for individual artists and creativity, remarked that are no longer necessarily perceived as distinctive structures of meaning and meaningful form, usually linked to territories. Further to this is the concept of border thinking, proposed by post-colonial theorist Walter McNullo, whereby new forms are produced through expanding and deterritorialized frontiers. Next. So, performing Southeast Asia, intercultural collaboration as shared heritage. The performing arts reflect and construct Southeast Asian perspectives through a cultural lens. And through interculturalism, we exchange and co-create to strengthen our regional cultural bonds. A syncretic approach in which the desired outcome is a unique Southeast Asian culture, developed from the blended selection of what is best from different cultures. A critical approach employs an in-depth understanding of culture, identity, transfer, and adaptation. This process generates alternative modes of artistic expression that may challenge and extend beyond conventional performance-making frameworks. Next. So this brings me to some examples, some recent examples. 𝗪𝗏𝗃𝗃 combines two Malay legendary tales to tell a story of Singapore's origins. So it's already, yes, the interculturalism at work. Malay tales to tell about Singapore's story. And through Rondai, a folk theater tradition of the Minangkabau ethnic group in West Sumatra, Indonesia, yet another cultural form. Okay? 𝗪𝗏𝗃𝗃 is about heritage, leadership, bravery, and ingenuity. So dance and theater students from China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Singapore, guided by lecturer 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗵𝗿, collaborated to create this piece for their BA performance making degree class. So let's have a look. Next slide. And this is a performance, an informal performance at Singapore's Night Festival. And we'll just show a bit of their performance. So keep in mind, this is student-created Malay dance forms to tell a Singapore story, performed by students from various countries, India, Indonesia, China, Singapore, and different ethnicities, Chinese, Malaysian, Indonesian, Indian. So now we're looking at something that is beyond just exchange. It's something more. And it is through dance, also through theater. Okay, so it's just an excerpt. Yet another intercultural collaboration that happened between the students of the dance and theater program is called My Art, Our Voices. And it was in response to an exhibition called Tropical Voices of Southeast Asia and South America at the National Gallery in Singapore. So again, the dance and theater students from China, India, and Singapore collaborated with myself to create this performative response to the exhibition. So let's just have a look at this trailer. So it's excerpted from different aspects of this performance that was performed at the National Gallery, Singapore. Let's have a look. It also involved art and design students who created some artifacts and videos that were screened before the performance.
That you are a part of the struggling masses.
So in collaboration, each of the students contributed different aspects of this performance, whether it be movement or text.
And now I stand with my art before you, dear inhabitants of this beautiful garden.
Okay, all right, next. And this brings me to a production that was called Iron Rice Bowl. It was created by Lee Yuan Ching, again, a BA performance making year 3 students in collaboration with her classmates of dance and theater students to raise concerns about artists and the value of art. Next. So based on the Chinese concept of 带等饭, a metaphor for job security and societal norms, Iron Rice Bowl presented the tension between stability and aspiration from tradition to the contemporary. Next. It involved Chinese, Eurasian, and Malay performers. And it consisted of Bahasa Indonesia, English, Malay, and Mandarin spoken text, and Western contemporary dance and music. So created by the students, right? It was not just interdisciplinary, but it was also intercultural. So let's have a look at the trailer. Thank you.
Awak dah makan belum? Dah makan belum? 你吃饭了吗? Have you eaten? People always joke about how art has no future, how art will starve you.
I have never had a consistent job to put food on the table. There's a drought. Awak dah makan ke belum?
Art isn't my bowl of rice. I want to prove them all wrong. I'll keep trying and trying to make the perfect bowl of rice.
Whatever it is, be good. Be good.
Next slide.
Awak dah makan ke belum?
Okay. So I'd like to thank you and end with this. Through intercultural collaboration, we shape a future for Southeast Asia that is vibrant, united, and celebrative. So let us move on together to achieve this. Thank you very much and have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carino, for your presentation. We'll move to the next session featuring presentations from 3 speakers from Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. The session will run for about 60 minutes and the presenters will present in turn. I will introduce them one by one before their presentation begins. So our first from Indonesia, I'll read his profile, 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗪, PhD. 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀 is known as a theater maker and writer whose practice and interest includes arts pedagogy and ecosystem, as well as performing citizenship. He works as a director of conference on Indonesian performance theater and earned his PhD from the Theater and Performance PhD program at the Graduate Center, City University of New York. Hello, Mr. How are you this morning? I hope you're well. It's time for the presentation. Mr. Jonet, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nisha, and good morning, everyone. Both you in Zoom and the studio in Jakarta, I hope you're all doing well. And thank you for UNESCO for having me to this session. Before I start, so when ARS Management contacted me for this webinar, I told them how interesting the session. Certainly, it's not only a warm reunion with 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗀 and 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and they will be in this panel as well. Hello, 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. But to me, it's also a reunion with the topic of theater and performance in the region. So during my coursework in the PhD life, I was required to develop 3 specific fields, which potentially to be a course. For my first field, which was historical, I was interested in the context of Southeast Asia performance. However, as we know, what so-called Southeast Asia is also challenging given the context of each country is different. If we talk about post-colonial history, then the history of the colonialism itself is also different. With that in mind, I then developed a field called theater and performance. Belum slide-nya, belum ada slide-nya dulu. Saya tunggu dulu, belum ada slide-nya dulu. Belum pakai slide dulu maksudnya, Mas. Yeah, okay. So with that in mind, I then developed a field called theater performance in post-colonial Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. As you can see, it's quite similar with today's topic. Moreover, I connect the link of the 3 countries, the Strait of Malacca, which, as we know, significantly contributed to the shared heritage we have now, be it bahasa Melayu, pencak, kebaya, or even foods. In contemporary performance, the history of Hang Tuah, for example, is now being explored through the works of 5 Art Center, for example. So yes, it's something that has been in the past, but for me, my field is not a nostalgia. Rather, it's a new perspective to dive into the context and interrelations among the 3 countries. Slide, please. So the recent development of Indonesian performing arts and the role of arts. So I'm not going to talk about my field, but rather I focus on Indonesia right now. Resume might be a precise word to describe the development of Indonesian performing arts for the last decade. It has been continuously growing horizontal. Some of them are evident on the surface, yet some are underground, which put our lateral suits in adventitious roots. Artistic platforms like festivals have been thriving, growing through various funding systems, and Indonesian performing artists, along with their work, have vastly contributed to the country's cultural landscape. Next slide, please. In the slide, we can see the map of ethnic groups in 600 ethnic groups here. As the development of performing arts is also constituted so much to the cultural background, I find it will be challenging to really formulate or define what Indonesian theater, for example, is. Which brings me to my first disclaimer. What I'm presenting today is now it's just a sample that hopefully represent what Indonesian performing arts today. Next slide, please. This presentation provides a brief overview on the current development of Indonesian performing arts, especially in theater and dance, and how they have grown, especially from the last 10 years. There are some pivotal aspects that have contributed to the development, like tradition, artist mobility, activism, funding, art school, venues, and artist platform, as well as cultural heritages. The example here epitomizes the fact that all aspects are well connected through various cultural programs. Moreover, they saw how the artists play significant roles as the weavers of various sources provided in those aspects through many artist initiatives. This, and the fact that the artists continue to contribute and play their roles in the performing arts scene, should be considered as a central attention for further development. Next, please. This slide shows one of my articles published in Kompas Daily, in which I attempt to make a statement that Indonesian theater is rhizomatic, everywhere, not hierarchical. This statement was important as the government urged us to organize ourselves, especially to the agenda of certification. To me, the government acknowledged the existence of the theater in the field first, which is quite different with film, for example, that is centered mostly in Jakarta or Java, or visual center in Jakarta, Bandung, Yogyakarta, or Bali. So to acknowledge the existence is extremely important. Next slide. Consolidation is once again conducted and organized by artists have made overview like my presentation in much more visible. Indonesian Dance Festival, IDF, the attempt in dance. I find IDF now is the biggest dance festival in Indonesia, founded in 1992. It is through this festival, choreographers and dancers, not in Indonesia, but also Asia, make connection. I will elaborate this that further down. Next slide, please. Organization like PNI, or Perkumpulan Nasional Theater Indonesia, Indonesian National Assembly of Theater, consolidate theater works among practitioners. I will elaborate on the two functions here. This organization is not a festival, yet a perkumpulan or assembly. This year, from November to December, along with the Temasek Foundation, they organize Festival Theater Indonesia. Next slide. PNASTRI consolidate and activate the ecosystem in Indonesia through various programs. This research is one of them, stating the existence of theater in many areas in Indonesia, as you can see in the slide. And this is just the first edition. The upcoming edition will provide us the update from different areas. So this is another big research that we are conducting now. And I myself is the head of the board member industry right now. So in the recent development, how about artistic work and artists? Slide 8 dan 9 nanti bolak-belakannya, Mas ya. In dance, the works vary along with the artist's cultural background. 8, slide berikutnya. In dance, the work vary along with the artist's cultural background, or even more specific, their training. The artistic practices span from the top of relationships, nature, embodiment, spirituality, to natural disaster and power station. Just to mention some names, 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏, 𝗔𝗵𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗏, Liu Neil Tasman, 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗏, Lembang, perhaps are just a few names from the list of Indonesian prolific choreographers nowadays. 9, 8 bolak-balik, Mas. They are actively involved in the artist platform in the region and present their works in different stages in the country. One can argue that the list certainly enhanced the long list of prominent Indonesian choreographers like Suprapto Suryodarmo, Sardono Wikusumo, 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗏 in the 80s, and Hartati Oeko Supriyanto in the 2000s. Slide 10 dan 11 juga bolak-balik. In theater, the work revolves around the issue of mobility, migration, urban life. Also share the topics with dance works, especially to the exploration of nature and embodiment. Theater groups like 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗿𝗀 in Jakarta, 𝗘𝗺𝗀𝗃 Makassar, Sulawesi, 𝗘𝗺𝗀𝗃 from Yogyakarta, 𝗘𝗺𝗃 from Lampung, and many other theaters like Nara Theater in Larantuka are some of example of the prominent names here. Next slide, please. Traditional theater performing arts like wayang orang, wayang kulit, lenong, ludruk, wayang golek, tari topeng, silat, or other traditional art forms become popular again. Aside from the performance in various cities, the younger generation learn also about them from the social media like TikTok. And you can see on the right side, there's also wayang orang Sriwedari, which you can see like every night in Solo. And on the right, there's wayang orang Barata in Jakarta. Every week, every weekend, they perform in their own venue. Next slide, please. It is also noteworthy to observe how puppet theater and object-based performance have developed differently throughout the country. Next slide. While 𝗵𝗶𝗰𝗸𝗀𝗀 balloon puppet are in Yogyakarta, one can also see Sekat Studio or 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗀 in Jakarta, Bon Puppet in Bandung, as well as Borneo Art Place in Palangkaraya or Kalimantan. Next slide. Musical theaters have been continuously producing their own plays, some based on movies or novels like Petualangan Sherina and Keluarga Cemara, aside from production based on Broadway musical plays like Mamma Mia and School of Rock. Practices within the communities, hence, are truly the heart of the beat of this recent development, which will bring me to the next existence of theater or dance studio, as we know them as sanggar. Next, please. Artist collective living and dance of theater studio, or we know here as sanggar, theater, sanggar tari, are ubiquitous. For Bali especially, dance studios are almost in every village. For other arts still, we can find the studio perhaps in every district. These dance studios grow along with cultural or government events like wedding or the anniversary of the city. Art collectives in contemporary arts are also mushrooming. Not only initiated and activated by artists, these artist collectives are also initiated by producers and dramaturgs. So aside from the artist collective themselves, we also have the collective of producers of dramaturgs. So we have the dance studio, theater studio, and producer and dramaturgs meetings as well. Such a collective space is important in generating and enhancing the field. In Jogja itself, for example, there are almost 25 artist residency opportunity every year organized by artist collective or venue, both in performing art as well as visual arts. So we go into platforms like now, like Festival 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗀 in the recent development of our performing arts. In dance, I previously mentioned IDF. In Sulawesi, we also have Festival 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, which is happening right now. Also, Bali International Performing Arts Meeting by PART, Paradance in Jogja is also pivotal in presenting work of choreographers. In theater, I start from the youngest. Pendek Jakarta Short Theater Festival. And this year is just the year of the festival. In Jakarta itself, we have Festival Theater Jakarta, which has been 50 years till now. Almost like more than 50 years, I believe. So aside of this young festival like Pendek, Jakarta also has one of the long-running, maybe in Asia, also this is Asia. The ITP or Jakarta International Theater Platform also plays a significant role. For 3 years, starting this festival focused on Bumantara from Sultan Tahdir Ali Shahbana, the idea that formulating the idea of perceiving Southeast Asia as a connecting network. IDRF, next slide please. Indonesia Dramatic Reading Festival, which has been 15 years like presenting Indonesia new plays. But in 2019, IDRF organized Asia Playwright meetings. As you can see in the slide, we find also Jintai, and she was presenting her play Plunge along with other Southeast Asian playwrights. This is something that for us working in the playwriting is important how we connect the ideas and try to embrace the idea of Southeast Asia and playwriting specifically in the region. Next slide, please. Theater Ruang Publik, public space theater in Bandung, and also Kala Monologue opening next month. So we also have a specific theater in public space theater in Bandung, which is also still young. This year is the second year. There are also what we call here community festival, which are organized usually by artists in their collaboration with certain communities to activate their spaces. Pasaharo, for example, is in Haro Valley in West Sumatra. Such festivals are usually an annual event. It is important along with this festival, most of them organize workshops and residencies, and also meetings and discussion, or even symposium, which is also important in the idea of the festival itself. Art school and universities, we have here ERTI, art school like Surakarta, ERTI Surakarta, ERTI Jakarta, ERTI Bali, ERTI Padang Panjang. We also have ISB, Institut Seni Budaya Indonesia in Aceh, Bandung, and Tanah Papua. We also have IKJ, Jakarta Institute, and other departments of humanities in other universities like Gadjah Mada University, Universitas Indonesia, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, and many other universities. All of these artists from this academic background now is in the field, then we can see their works. This is quite interesting also to elaborate. Recently, the field and performing is really contributed by their works. Artists who graduate from formal education in art school, which not really happened in my era in the 90s, for example. How we know about this in the art grants application, in residency application, every time we receive the application, most of them, they're coming from not formal education of arts training in the Institute of Arts like this. But now, if you see the festivals in Indonesia, most of them, I would say, are graduated from the art school, which is, that's a improvement to some extent. Funding. We have certainly funding system for the arts. Next slide, please. I list here, before that, this is Jagat Lengger, organized by Othniel Tasman, who graduated from ERTI Surakarta, and then he did his master also in Surakarta, and now I think continuing his study as well in the city, in the institution. And he organized this Jagat Lengger, like Festival for Lengger in Banyumas, in his hometown. Funding, slide, the next slide. So we list here, we have certain funding system for the arts, and it has a better improvement right now. I will start with Kelola Foundation. I start the arts grant performing arts, especially theater and dance music since the late 90s. And I think this organization laid out the foundation and the benchmark of the art grants in Indonesia by annually conducting this panel to select which artists that will be supported through the art grants. And then we have Indonesiana, this endowment of the culture that varies the way they provide support from the production, from the activating the public space, for international trips or cultural trips, and organizing institutional support, and so different other kind of support for the cultural activities. Private company through CSR, as local government, they are also playing the significant roles in providing. For example, in Jogja itself, they also have the funding for arts from the local government. And international cultural representative, Japan Foundation, Institut Francais, good British Council as few names that we can mention here that's still active in the fields, connecting us to broader conversation in their own context. The next, please, slide. This is also one of the production, which is my own production, supported by 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗏 Foundation. And this is something that's really important to underline in the idea of grant providing. In the late 90s until in the beginning of the 2000s, 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗏 really support more experimental arts, and that really encourage different artists to start producing different kind of works. Even if the audience is only like 20 or 25, like in this production. And this production is called 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗀, performed by blinders. And ask the audience to use the blindfold to experience the whole theater itself. So this kind of funding, especially for something that's more explorative, I would say, or really extremely important in the late 90s or 2000, and even a decade later, and until now, which is now provided by Indonesia. So the next slide, please. This is also another project at 𝗪𝗀𝗏 in Buton Island, nearby Sulawesi, and this group also receive support from Indonesia to conduct and to active space in their own context, and usually activated by youth artists. Next slide, please. This is also 𝗘𝗺𝗊𝗪𝗂𝗏. This festival also support last year from Indonesia, from the government, which make the festival possible. But still, this is what I really need to make, that it's all initiated by artists, but it's supported by the government. The next slide, please. Indonesia bertutur in 2023 and 24 are important to describe how the recent development of performing art is really connected to the idea of heritage and cultural heritage. And through these festivals, first in Borobudur Temple in Central Java and the second in Bali, this event really activates the idea of cultural heritage, arts and other form of art like visual art and literature, to provide us more reflective way, the way we understanding this heritage. Not only about the way we perceive as a legacy from the past, but also the way they provide a new perspective to understand the knowledge transmission, knowledge production in the area using the heritage themselves. And that was under the direction of artistic direction from Melati Suryadarmo, which is also the prominent performance artist. Most importantly, in the two festivals, they also conducted and organized different and many workshops and symposium. And in Indonesia, sometimes not only the celebration of the main event, but the whole parallel events are also contributive to the development of the ecosystem as well. So to conclude, better government funding support for the arts, including performing arts, has significantly improved quality and the quantity of art ecosystem. Far before that, the artists, along with the community, rigorously laid out the foundation for the better ecosystem, even when it did not gain any support. The existence of many festivals that I previously mentioned has proven the artists' attempt to continuously develop and initiate their own platform. That said, it is mandatory to involve the artists for further development, especially when it follows many tremendous amount of support and resources, as we see right now in Indonesia. Thank you. I give it back to you, Nisa.
Thank you, Mr. for the presentation. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat box and we will discuss them during the discussion session when the open mic and open cam are available. So it's time to move on to the next presentation from our second speaker from Malaysia, 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙 playwright, researcher, and educator whose work spans directing, writing, and translating. For years, he has directed and written a number of productions, including Teater Juta-Juta, Berani Mati, Kotak Hitam, Mati Hidup Kembali, dan Tantan. His works have been presented in Malaysia as well as in Japan, Indonesia, Singapore, Canada, and the Czech Republic. Currently, 𝗪𝗂𝗪 is part of the Malaysian Theatre Archive Project, My Art Memory Project, where he contributes as a researcher. He also serves the performing arts community as a grant panelist, jury member, moderator, and judge. At present, he is pursuing a PhD in theater studies at the Faculty of Creative Arts, University Malaya, focusing on new approaches to the historiography of Malaysian theater. Hello, Mr. 𝗪𝗪𝗪, can you hear us? Thank you so much for joining us today. It's time for the presentation. Mr. 𝗪𝗪𝗪, please go ahead.
Right, thank you. Thank you. And also, I would like to welcome everyone here, especially Jonette from the previous speaker, long time no see, and also 𝗏𝗏𝗀 who will be presenting after this. Let me share my screen. Wait, sorry, it's not this one. Okay, can you see it now? All right, I'm going to start. So my topic here is to talk about Malaysian theatre, and I will talk about from traditional roots and contemporary voices, and how it's developed from the pre-colonial and colonial and also post-colonial era and up until now. But before we go any further, I will maybe have an introduction. And put you into context, what is Malaysia actually? So in 16 September 1963 is the formation of Malaysia. So before this, Malaysia is just a concept. Probably if you, before 1963, Malaysia is actually don't exist. So it's Malaya, or in bahasa we call Tanah Melayu or Persekutuan Tanah Melayu, Malaya Federation. But in September 63, the formation of Malaysia, which consists Malaya, the peninsular part, Singapore, Sabah, or at the time it's called North Borneo, and also Sarawak, together form as Malaysia. But in 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia, and the members of Malaysia up until now is the peninsula, Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak. So this is the demography of Malaysia at the moment. So Bumiputera, or it's consists almost 70%, 69.4%, Chinese 23.2%, Indian 6.7%, and others 0.7%. Actually, this is important for us to know before we go into the history or maybe the development of theatre in Malaysia, because that's how it's also shaped the development of Malaysian theatre. And this is the demography of religion. So the majority of Malaysian are Muslims, which is 63.4%, Buddha 18.7%, Christian 9.1%, Hindu 6.1%, and others 2.7%. This is also important. Then later I will talk about how then the cultural policy, national cultural policy shape how we do art in Malaysia. So before we begin, I would like to maybe share a little bit our traditional roots. This is 𝗪𝗰𝗀𝗀𝗀, one of the art scholar, theatre scholar in Malaysia, have talked or maybe mentioned and described about our historical roots. He said our theatre consists of 4 types in the traditional roots, which is the proto-theatre. It's the earliest and simplest form of theatre in Malaysia. Of course, at that time, Malaysia doesn't exist, so it's the Malaya. So probably he talked more about the Malay traditional theatre, the indigenous traditional theatre, indigenous theatre in Malaysia. So in proto-theatre, it's 2 types. So it's storytelling and ritual-based. Storytelling is like 𝗪𝗪𝗿𝗀. So this is the name of the form, 𝗪𝗪𝗿𝗀, selampit or tarik selampit, which is solo performer as a narrator, an actor and musician. So they basically tell a story. So of course there's elements of performance, there's a story to tell, there's a plot and some dramatic action, and sometimes the performer act a little bit during the storytelling. So it's not really have a ensemble of performer yet at that time. So that's why they call it proto-theatre. And the other types of proto-theatre is a kind of ritual which involve shamanic and healing and trance practices. Some of it is Berlian, Bagian, Main Tegi. I only watch the last form, is Main Tegi, because it's not really practiced widely as for now. There's some communities still practice it. And of course, this involves shaman and trance. And that's why I think these types of performances consider proto-theatre, whereas there's elements of performance, there's a music, there's dance, there's elements of embodying different character in trance, during the trance, during the trance lah. And also the function is for this proto-theatre is for oral tradition, to tell a story, spiritual balance and community bonding. So they come together and watch the performance. So this is the example. Of course, this is a very modern picture. The left one is tarik selampit. So selampit is actually the instrument play upright like a cello, but the player will sit on the floor. And on the right hand side is 𝗪𝗪𝗿𝗀𝗀. So awang is actually the person, and batil is actually the bronze pot that the performer or the player will strike and tell a story. As you can see, he wears a mask, and there's another mask on the floor. And this is Main Puteri. I think this is not really considered the real Main Puteri. So it's just a performance that we have in Aswara, one of the national arts institution in Malaysia. So they present it, but the form, and as you can see the picture, try to convey what 𝗪𝗶𝗿𝗀 look like. Some of the practices they still continue the practices to just for the sake of continuity and keep the tradition alive. But it's not really widely practiced very widely in the community. And the second form of traditional theatre is a puppet theatre. I think this is a very similar to other Southeast Asian country. A puppet theatre we also have. I think this is traditional roots we all have in something common. So puppet theatre represented mainly by wayang kulit or shadow play. Several plays wayang kulit Siam, Kelantan, 𝗪𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗧, and Melayu. So I think we share, because in Nusantara at the time there's no border. The performer, the troupe travel from island to island, island to peninsula to share their stories. And so of course there's maybe some words like 𝗪𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗪𝗧. It's transported from Indonesia to Malaysia, and the narrative often adapt from Hindu epic. This I think is similar to Indonesia, and also local tales. Performer dalang, which is control puppets, voice characters, and directs music. So the function is of course ritual, moral, lesson, and entertainment. I think this is wayang kulit Kelantan. It's a very different shape from what we have in Indonesia. So ours is like quite chubby, I would say. The third types is dance theatre, which combine dance, drama, and ritual. So major form is makyong, menora, or lakon chatri, mek mulung. Makyong, we can also have a makyong in some parts of island in Indonesia. So that's how they travel to different parts of Southeast Asia. And makyong is a blend animism, shamanism, and storytelling, and music. And menora have a Buddhist link, which have southern parts of Thai, and perform in vow and healing. And mek mulung is village based. At the moment, mek mulung, I think it's already recognized at the UNESCO as a intangible heritage. And the function is ritual healing, myth retelling, and community celebration. This is a makyong. This is a very famous performer in Malaysia. His name is Rosnan, Encik Rosnan. This is menora. As you can see, it's a different types of headgear and different types of costume and also accessories. The last type or category is opera, popular theatre. So it's bangsawan. So it's more like modern, whereas the acting is so like not really realistic, but we can recognize and easy to understand. It's more like the spoken word is more like very clear. The story is very clear. So in opera or popular theatre, we have bangsawan, GK. I talk about bangsawan first. Bangsawan emerged in the late 19th century, influenced by Indian 𝗪𝗲 theatre, where they come to Penang and then started to perform there, and then the local tried to adapt and then bought over their setting and props and costume and form a theatre company there, and then it started to populate over Peninsular Malaysia. It's considered the first urban theatre in Malay language, and features a modern, like I said, modern features like proscenium stage, music, dance, improvisation, role, and legendary stories. GK is a different types of theatre in this category. a smaller scale folk opera, include music, song, and comic dialogues. So this is Bangsawan. Actually, Bangsawan also traveled to Singapore and also some parts of Indonesia, and they exchange the story and try to make the story relevant to the local community. And of course, the local community will try to adapt and make their own way of performing and maybe adjust the form. And later, in Indonesia, I will talk about it later. It changed to Sandiwara, and then I will talk about it later. This is GK. And the other form of opera theater is a Boria. Mainly you can find in Penang, Hadra Hamdolo, and I'll just maybe continue the function. It's a form mass entertainment, cultural mixing, and foundation for modern theater. So they are more popular, and the story is easy, it's simple, it's approachable, and people would like to come and listen because it's maybe funny and relevant to them. So we're gonna shift into the 20th century theater. Of course, the colonial encounters and regional exchange shaped our Malaysian theatre. The British introduced their theatre to Malayan city. So there's a officer in each cities. So of course they will bring their expat or maybe their community to come together and the text and come together and rehearse and perform for their community. So for the local elite, they watch and then they get inspired and maybe shape and try to make their own stories using the Western form and format. And performance range from modern realist play, from Chekhov, from realist and realist play, Strindberg, and to Western canon from Shakespeare and classical Greek work. Basically, it's staged in a proper theatre hall for British officers and English educated local elite. So they have like space. They are not performing in the field or maybe in kampong in the square, but in a proper building. This is what I talked about from Indonesian Sandiwara. So our Sandiwara in Malaysia is really affected from the Indonesian movement. Of course, at that time, the Indonesia and Malaysia have a similar movement, try to get independence from our colonial, from the colonial, and the spirits of nationalism has emerged at that time. And of course, this is why this happened is because the distribution of printed material expanded. We can get exchange the news, pamphlet, magazine, and books between two nations nearing the independence. And theatre strengthened nationalist spirit. Local playwrights were inspired by some Indonesian troops. And of course, with this kind of modern or new agenda, new approach of making theatre, it's a move away from ritual, a community function towards a stage-based performance. I don't know, maybe you want to call it propaganda or don't, but I think they have a different agenda and use theatre in different way. And modernization, of course, reduced traditional elements seen as unsuitable for modern society. So the 4 types of theatre that I mentioned earlier getting less popular and getting replaced by a new modern approach. And theatre become more circular, urban, and accessible to broader audience. And post-independence, I talk about the 1960s and 70s. After Merdeka in 1957, drama reflected the new nation concern. Of course, after British left, how are we gonna like run the country? So what is the story that we want to tell? they're still struggling to find what is our identity, our cultural identity, our story. And at the time, of course they don't know yet. And theater group continue the colonial legacy. So the stage continue the practices that have been left by the British, bring in the Western text and perform in English, and is continues segregated. The English theater, Malay theater, and Chinese theater, Indian theater. So they work in silos, and they have little concern for national identity. Each group stays theater within its own community. Of course, they mingle for the economic reason, but for the social reason, they don't have the reason yet. And of course, the school up until now, we still have a different types of schools. So the Sekolah Kebangsaan is for the all student, and the language we use is Bahasa Melayu, Malay language, and also we have a Chinese language school, Tamil language school, and some parts of Borneo they have their indigenous language to keep the culture, to keep the language as well. And because of this, probably we have a little exchange between group during that time. Malay language plays usually explore nationalism, talk about rural and urban change, the dichotomy between character that live from kampung, from village to the city. And talk about social issues like how the economy, the way of life in the cities, in the kampung, in the village shape them and their thinking, the modernity and the education, the politics at the time. Where English language theatre also active, especially in school and universities. And of course, like I said, English theatre, they have not much concern about the local issue and context. So they continue to stage Western plays. And of course, at that time, realism gained ground. So they use the good thing about realism where they get the inspiration from the Western theatre is they can use this format to portray everyday Malaysian life, to talk about the reality of Malaysian people at that time, their community. And theatre become a site for negotiating identity and national culture. So of course, at this time, as time goes by, people start mingling and talk to each other and see how they this new nation will find way forward. Most theatre group formed by youth association at the time, and teachers, student, and arts and culture club. So there is no commercial or a commercial company or theatre company that form to collect money as a business entity. So most of them theatre company or groups, youth association, like I said, teachers, student, and arts and culture club. And because this group of people can get easier access to the infrastructure, they can have a rehearsal and performance spaces ready in campus, or maybe theatre hall in the community, in kampung, in village, or maybe city. They have access to typewriters, so they can write proper script and get it print in school or university, or maybe in the office of the club or association. And most importantly, this generation, this group of people is a literated people. They can read, not like older generation that maybe not many can read. So this generation can read and have can read script, can write script, and that's how it shaped the way the drama and theater evolved in Malaysia. And of course, the main purpose of performance at the time, like I mentioned, is not the commercial value, but to collect donation as a part of occasion, festival, or competition, or celebration, and as cultural activities, not primarily commercial. So this is some of paper clipping that mention why they did theater. So of course, Malam Amal Persatuan Seni Drama is a charity night for dramatic art. Was written in Malay, and this is for as you can see Islam here. So it's to embrace the knowledge of Islam using theater. And also this is to collect money so that they can build building and whatnot. So move toward contemporary direction in 70s onward. Before we go any further, so what was happened in the late 1960s, there's race riot that happened in Kuala Lumpur. And after this race riot, they tried to come up with two new policies that try to balance the society. The first one is national cultural policy, and the second one is a new economic policy. The new economic policy, they look at the composition of society in Malaysia is not balanced. The economic is not balanced. So most of the urban area is majority is Chinese, and they control the economy, and Malay in village and Indian in the estate. So they try to balance the economy so that everyone in Malaysia can live in prosper, keluar dari kemiskinan, come out with from the poverty. But I will not talk about the new economic policy, and I will talk about the national cultural policy that shape how we do theatre. The national cultural policy consists three principles. The first one is based on indigenous culture of the Malay archipelago. This principle establishes the culture of the native Malay people as the foundation of the national culture. Two, accepting suitable element from other cultures, which is other cultures in Malaysia, so we can accept culture from Chinese community, Indian community, and also other communities. It recognizes Malaysia's multi-ethnic society by allowing for the inclusion of suitable elements from other cultures such as Chinese, like I mentioned, Indian and Western tradition. And three, Islam as a pivotal element in the formation of the national culture, given that Islam is the official religion of Malaysia and is an integral part of the culture of the majority Malay population. It is enshrined as a significant component of the national culture. So our national culture is based on this. We are either you Malay, Chinese, Indian, so we must try to respect these three principles. And that's how our culture is shaped, and also it's affect how we do theatre. And of course, in the 70s, after this NCP, experimental and alternative theatre began to emerge for the Malay theatre, Chinese theatre, English theatre. And as this influences symbolic style and new stage aesthetic, we, of course, with the printing culture, it's easier to get access to books, to television, to the media. So we easily get inspired from other parts of the world. And of course, these absurdities also influence in Malaysia and try to make a different way of theatre by incorporating our traditional or culture, our arts, traditional arts. And post-colonial theme has emerged and also then we realized that we are not colonized anymore. So what's next? So they talk about race, identity, censorship, and politics even more. And urban centers like Kuala Lumpur and Penang become hubs for new theatre. And also to mention Kuching in Sarawak and also Kota Kinabalu in Sabah. Theatre function as both artistic expression and social critique. So it's not just for entertainment, but also for different purposes. Performing arts courses introduced in the 70s in the university, providing formal training for practitioners. So before this, there's no formal training. So they learn by their seniors or maybe from previous practitioners. But now they come to school, to university, and learn about theatre. And theatre groups began involving other ethnic communities, especially in language theatre. It's very interesting in the 70s and 80s, English theatre in Malaysia getting more, getting start to emerge more because they think that they also have a story of Malaysia to tell. So they want also to be part of this movement, this new direction. And also at the time, modern infrastructure was planned and built, and commercialization started to emerge. They are not just putting a play for the community, for the entertainment, but also for how can they make money from it. And this is some of the old poster that we collect in my art memory project as part of the research group, the research project that we have in Malaysia. So Desaria is by 𝗪𝗪𝗀. He is considered one of the important theatre maker during his time. As you can see, it was performed at University Malaya. So of course, university played important role in develop and or to kick start the new direction of Malaysian theatre. And the other one is Operetta 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪. As you can see, it's written in Chinese character. And 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗀 is very important legend character from China that married to the Malaccan Sultan at the time. So it's a very popular story and was staged. Everybody knows about the story in Malaysia. So the stories start to we not just we mingle, but we also incorporate each other's story to tell to the audience. And the other one, this the Need to Be, written by Patrick Yeo, is a Chinese Malaysian and writes in English. Also, it was performed in University Malaya at the time. Was performed also, Malayan Art Theatre Group here is considered the oldest at the time, the oldest and very active theatre group in Malaysia. Today's Malaysian theatre. So the arts education expanded. So the graduates now works in the industry, do research, teaching, and creating a stronger ecosystem. So in the 70s, of course, they are a student, but after 30 years, they come as a lecturer, as an artist that contribute back to the society, and this create a good ecosystem. And now is the continuity and more university has established and offered not just a course, but a program from diploma level to PhD level. Aswara Academy, a National Academy of Arts, Culture and Heritage in Malaysia is one of the biggest institutions in Malaysia that only focus on the arts and culture and offer program from diploma up to PhD. So, an arts focused boarding school is also established also, nurturing talent from young age, so they can come to the school from age of 13 up to 17, 18, and then later they pursue their studies in university in Malaysia. Some of them continue to do theater, to do arts, but some of them pursuing different program. But I think that's okay because we already nurture them from the beginning. And it's also the arts education also emphasis on the arts appreciation. So now more people, if they are not really in the industry, in the ecosystem, at least they know that this is our culture, we should keep, we should nurture and continue to flourish. So this is some of the picture and shows done by the school production. And also improved infrastructures supported growth, not just the soft, the education, but also the physical. And this focus centered around the major cities like Kuala Lumpur, Georgetown, Ipoh, Kuching, Kota Kinabalu, and some other parts of the state in Malaysia. But rural areas remain underdeveloped. And of course, in the 70s, like I mentioned, the theatre has become favored to the urban communities. So it's continued to sideline the rural areas and mark the era of commercialization. So now people talk about the creative economy and whatnot. So they try to find ways how to make money or maybe to prosper from making arts. So this is some of the infrastructure. So Istana Budaya is our national theatre. At the moment, going to renovation. It will open next year, I hope. And also other cities. This is a private PJPAC, Petaling Jaya Performing Arts Center is a private entity. So this is the, I think the first, or maybe the, now we have one that we have Performing Arts Center in the mall. And this one is KLPAC, Kuala Lumpur Performing Arts Center. It's in the old building. And the right down side near the sea is the located in Johor Bahru, and the left down is Sarawak Performing Arts Center. I think it will be open in next 2 years. Now it's in the still in construction, so it's getting bigger and bigger if you see in from the infrastructure. So they have money to put and hope to flourish the theatre making in different city. And of course, this our today's theatre practice is more hybrid and diverse. So it's blend tradition with modern and global form. So they now realize that we cannot leave the traditional roots. So we must bring it to highlight, to maybe innovate from our traditional and make it global. And it's also reflect Malaysia's multicultural voices, Malay, Chinese, Indian, and indigenous. We are now, the younger generation is more aware of our society and incorporate and also involve them in production and make the Malaysian voices stronger and louder. And it's also performed in State Theatre, University's independent space. But now, if you can see the big building, not many people can perform in that big building. So this new independent space also emerged from that to counter as a counter movement to that movement. So, and contemporary plays engage with migration history and everyday struggle. Of course, this everyday struggle is important topic from back then. What I said about the independent space just now is so some players, some theatre practitioners decided not to go in the big space and prefer to do theatre in their own space. So this new like shop lot theatre, they rent a shop lot, a theatre company rent a shop lot that have can sit around 50 audience and turn it into like a small studio and small black box. So some of the space that we have is bilik sempit or small room, store theatre DBP, and kotak 5 art center, and many other more. So these are the scale of production is very small. So sometimes only like 1 to maybe 4 performer and can fit like 50 to 80 audience per show. This kind of movement or the recent development of theatre also encourage the young and the youth to start doing theatre and create their own community and to reach their audience. And it's easy to get like 50 audience rather to promote their shows to 1,000 seater auditorium. And of course, I do PhD in historiography in Malaysia, and this is how the previous scholar or historian look and write about the Malaysian theatre history. So this is not all, but this is from my reading, and most of them look at the development of Malaysian theatre evolve in each decade. So it's more from 1940s to 50s is one era, and the other, and it's continued up until now. So this is the very rigid way of to write history in Malaysia and development. But of course, we can look at this as a guidance. But of course, his story is not written, or it's not things are not happen in decades. So it should be written organically. But this is what we have from the previous historian and scholar. And also it's very segregated with Malay language theatre history, English language theatre history, and Chinese language theatre history and development. So it's not really Malaysian. So this is the last slide. Malaysian theatre history is not a straight line. It's shaped by continuity, rupture, and reinvention, and always balancing between tradition and modernity, part of wider Southeast Asian performance landscape. And to this stage, it's a meeting place of past and present, and local and global. And thank you. I hope I don't exceed time. And if you have any question, then can post it on a chat, and maybe I can answer it after this. Thank you. I pass it to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fastiali, for your presentation. If anybody has any questions, leave them in the chat box. Don't forget to leave your name, your institution and country of origin, as well as who the question is directed to. We're going to move to the next presentation. So this one is from our last speaker from Singapore, Dr. 𝗪𝗠 Tan. I'll read her profile. 𝗪𝗠 Tan makes sense of art through intimate writing. A way between journalism and academia, her creative practice traverses criticism, dramaturgy, facilitation, and research. She's the arts editor of an independent digital magazine, the director of the Asian Dramaturgs Network, and postdoctoral fellow in the arts at the Helsinki Collegium for Studies. 𝗪𝗠 holds a PhD in theater and performance studies, jointly awarded by King's College London and the National University of Singapore. Thesis, The Intimate Critic, insists on criticism as a relational act and is grounded in theory doing and performance making from the Southeast Asian archipelago. For the past 15 years, she has written extensively about performance and culture for publications such as The Guardian, Arts Equator, Exxon Magazine, and The Times. Hello, Ms. 𝗪𝗠 Tan. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. It's time for the presentation.
Could I get someone to share my slides? Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm 𝗪𝗠. I'm actually currently in Finland, in Helsinki, and I woke up at 5 a.m. for this lecture. It is currently 6:20 a.m. here. So I am running on a lot of coffee. Please bear with me if I'm a bit muddled at this point. But thank you so much. The title of my presentation today is A Fractal History of the Performing Arts Sector in Singapore Through the Finite Body of a Critic. And what do I mean by that? Let's go to the next slide. So I'm really glad that we heard from two very different people before this. From Jonette, who is a theater maker and playwright and runs a really incredible dramatic reading festival in Indonesia. And I'm really glad I'm also coming after Fastiali as a trained historian and also trained in historiography. So he was actually able to compress 200 years of performing arts history into 20 minutes so that my job is basically done for today. I'm taking a very different approach. I'm not a historian by training. I've always been a performing arts critic, which is interesting because if Fastiali is going into archives of text and looking at all these documents and artifacts of performance, very often it's the journalists, the writers, the critics who are producing these texts in newspapers, in magazines, for people to subsequently look through and make sense of. So I've basically been a critic for the past 15 years, and that is my primary relationship with performance. If history is an archive of what's come before, then I think of the critic very often as an embodied archive of all the performances she has encountered. Everything that I've watched on stage is imprinted in my body and expressed through my writing. And I often think of the page, whether I'm writing for a digital magazine or for a newspaper, as a place of encounter between the artist, the artwork, the audience or the reader, and also the stage. And so this presentation will very much focus on my personal archive of watching performing arts, which generally skews towards more theater and dance. But I hope to also maybe incorporate a little bit about music and other art forms into this presentation. The next slide, please. So because I'm not a historian, I'm going to focus mainly on 4 broad and more contemporary themes that have come up as I've observed the scene in Singapore over the past 15 years. And so I'm going to look at our inheritances, what we've inherited from lineages that came before, our infrastructures, whether that's money, space, or time, this concept of the inter, moving in the in-between, and finally looking at intimacy. And I titled this presentation A Fractal History Through a Finite Body because, you know, my knowledge of a scene is necessarily going to be fractional. I'm only going to be able to see certain parts of it, not the entire whole. And so what I'm sharing comes from a very specific point of view. And I'm also not infinite. I'm a finite body. I can only be in so many places at so many times. And that is from which, that's the place from which I'm going to share my experience. Okay, next slide, please. So I saw this question in the chat that I really appreciated. Someone said, I like the idea of the intercultural or the fusion of culture during performance, but what will happen to the identity of this culture? So I think in Singapore, in contemporary art making, we've inherited a very interesting set of cultural and historical contexts from those who came before. If you see on the screen here, this is a scene from the show Descendants of the Eunuch Admiral, which was created and directed by basically the godfather of contemporary of modern Singapore theatre, 𝗘𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀, and it was staged at Theatre Works, which is one of our vanguard kind of performing arts company, now rebranded as T-Works. The next slide, please. So when 𝗘𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀 was kind of assessing our performing arts scene in the 1980s and 1990s, he was wondering aloud if Singaporeans would be considered cultural orphans. As this multilingual community and society of immigrants from all different kinds of civilizational cultures, from India, from China, from Malaya, he wondered, are we cut off from our former homelands? Do we have to forsake our histories and our cultural identities to build something anew? Or is that actually a kind of freedom that we can pursue in an entirely different new national and social identity in the wake of post-colonialism and independence? Or in the present day, have we been orphaned or cut off from a state that used to believe that poetry is a luxury that we cannot afford? His play, The Descendants of the Eunuch Admiral, that you saw on the screen before, it uses the figure of the Admiral 𝗔𝗀𝗀, who was a eunuch in the Chinese dynasty and who traveled extensively around Southeast Asia, as a metaphor for our ancestors. Are we castrated from our different countries, and do we start anew, or can we find a different and renewed kind of identity in that? So I do believe that the Singaporean performing arts scene of today is very polyphonic. We draw from many different language streams, from many different cultures, from many different contexts. It's plural. Singapore is a very largely immigrant nation. While we have over 6 million people residing in Singapore, only about just over almost 4 million are citizens, and the rest are other kinds of residents and transient workers and expatriates. And despite, I think, the less attention, I think, paid to arts in the earlier years of our independence as a very pragmatic nation, I think artists have been incredibly persistent about pursuing the art forms. I also think performing artists in Singapore are very creatively omnivorous. So artists often respond to and question taken for granted notions of history and identity, and consider how we might hold power to account. Artists have also become really confident about blending disciplines, forms, languages, and also deconstructing, as 𝗪𝗁 mentioned, what we understand as the traditional or the contemporary. And also the personal can be really political. I think artists are very interested in how art might both challenge but also entertain. So we look at the two photographs on the screen here. I chose these because I think they really exemplify a lot of different ways in which artists have been creating exciting hybrid work in Singapore, a mix of both classical and contemporary forms. So on the bottom left, we have a performance by the Nanyin troupe, Xiangling Musical Association. So Nanyin is an ancient form of Chinese chamber music that originated in the southern parts of China and traveled to our part of the world in the Nusantara. But Xiangling Musical Association has been really proactive about inviting a lot of different kinds of directors and collaborators to work with them to think about how this form might gain new life in the present day. So the performance that you see here, which took place earlier this year, invited the experimental theatre practitioner Liu Xiaoyi to direct it. And he actually invited dancers and also the Indonesian, Javanese, and Balinese dance practitioner Didik 𝗏𝗏 to perform together with the Nanyin performers and to really reflect and interrogate on how the form has evolved since it traveled to Singapore. And in the top right-hand corner, we have Nakdara performed by Prisma, which is a Malay minority dance group from Singapore. It was choreographed by 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗏, who is trained in Malay dance, but she's also very interested in exploring the sensuality and sexuality of the female body. So she draws a lot from Malay classical dance vocabularies and invites a group of people with both contemporary and classical training to reinterpret these forms. And so this particular piece was very interested in how the kain batik sits on the body of the female performer. Next slide, please. So these are some of the current explorations that I've observed artists doing in Singapore. I think there are a lot of people currently interested in ecology and the climate transition. In technology and AI, there's a lot of concern about whether AI and tech will eclipse what artists are doing, or if artists can actually use it as a helpful tool to make art. There's been an increasing move to create more access in the arts, especially creating disability-led performance. I think we have some representatives from the Esplanade today, which is our big performing arts center, and they've been really taking the lead in including things like closed captions, interpretation, maybe touch tours of set pieces for people who are non-sighted to really widen our audience and who gets to experience and participate in art. Artists are also very interested in poverty and inequality. While Singapore is often viewed as a very rich and affluent country, there is actually significant inequality among people. We may have billionaires, but there are a lot of people in the sandwich class who feel that their home is getting increasingly expensive and cannot afford daily, and rent is going up, food is getting more expensive. People are also very interested in migration and displacement, especially because Singapore is a big immigrant society. Because Singapore is so tiny and so small, there's always a huge question about land use and land scarcity. So that's also come up a lot in our theatrical explorations. Artists are increasingly interested in alternative archives and histories, after being told and taught the same history for very long. Artists sometimes now revisit the archives and think, what other stories have been buried or marginalized that we can surface and retell on the stage? And finally, there's also a huge interest at the present moment to really explore archipelagic and maritime Southeast Asia and the connections that Singapore has, both old and new, to Indonesia, Malaysia, and other parts of the archipelago, even extending up to the Philippines and to Taiwan. So there are 3 shows here that I think address many of these current interests and concerns. So on the far left, we have 𝗶𝗶𝗰𝗙 by the Theatre Practice. The Theatre Practice was founded by 𝗘𝗵𝗂𝗀 and his wife and partner 𝗪𝗀𝗀 in 1965, the year we became independent. And 𝗶𝗶𝗰𝗙 is created by Ang Xiao Ting, who runs a practice tuck shop, which is a little pop-up cafe and programming space within the Theatre Practice that looks at how we can explore zero waste or reduce our carbon footprint when we are making theatre, and looks at eco-scenography and how we can build sustainable practices into the staging of work itself. So 𝗶𝗶𝗰𝗙 is an interactive performance that also looks at how we can look at food waste and ferment it and do that as a shared communal experience. So that was just staged at the Esplanade recently as part of their studio season. In the middle, we see another very different show that was staged at the Singapore International Festival of Arts earlier this year that really looked at, what are kind of these machine prosthetics and AI prosthetics in the Singapore arts landscape. And one very interesting thing that this collective did was that they tried to imagine what an AI-generated National Day song for Singapore would look like. And it was shockingly on point, but also eerily disturbing. You would see all these multiracial faces smiling on screen. You would see people playing football games together across races and cultures, except these soccer games, instead of just one ball on the stage, on the field, you would see 3 because the machine would have generated it wrongly. And then you see all these dystopian buildings that look like very strange interpretations of Marina Bay Sands. And then finally, the third picture with the woman holding up the placard, "Enough is Enough." That's a production by Bird's Migrant Theatre, which is comprised of transient workers in Singapore, often domestic workers or construction workers from the Philippines, and South Asia, and they came together to put together a show on what it means to be voluntary migrants, to leave your home voluntarily in search for jobs and livelihood, but what also it means to be a refugee, to be involuntarily displaced, which we see a lot in the world today with conflicts such as that in Palestine. The next slide, please. So now I want to take a look at the different kinds of infrastructure that we have in Singapore, whether that's in terms of funding, in terms of place and site where we get to do our work, and in terms of time, like how much time people are afforded to do the work that they do. Next slide, please. So Singapore, a lot of the arts groups in Singapore are primarily funded by the state through the Ministry for Culture, Community and Youth, through the National Arts Council. We have a lot of arts groups on various grant tiers that receive a lot of funding from the state. But of course, you know, funding from the state necessarily and understandably comes with a lot of strict terms and conditions. But that can be also very restrictive for artists who are hoping to, you know, maybe be more critical or reflect on other things that are not within the state's remit. So there's been a lot of push over the past few years to think about how we can diversify our funding, because Singaporeans have come to become very reliant on state funding to do their work. So there's been a big push also now to seek out other corporate or private sources of funding, but that's been very difficult. Singapore is a very commercial and corporate hyper-capitalist place, and often funders are more attracted to certain things rather than others. And so that's been a bit of a struggle in the past 15 years. And also because Singapore is getting so increasingly expensive and rent is so exorbitant, it's becoming very difficult for independent spaces to make a living and to keep up their rents. And so in the past few years, we've seen a lot of independent spaces folding due to kind of, you know, various both funding and state negotiations. One of them is the Substation that you see on the bottom left here, which was really a beloved independent art space in Singapore. And more recently, we also had an independent cinema, the projector closed after it was not able to pay back millions of dollars in rent. So because of this, the scene in Singapore has become a lot more manicured and has a less diverse ecology. Although I think there are a lot more people hoping now to revive that sense of independent DIY, do-it-yourself ethos in Singapore. And to retain those, I think, quite productive tensions between the more accessible mainstream programming and also more niche experimental platforms. I like to think of the art scene as an ecology. We cannot all just be growing the same crop. You know, we can't all just be growing rice, because if a plague or a pest comes and wipes us all out, you know, then that will just destroy our ecosystem entirely. We need to build an ecosystem that has, you know, all kinds of things so that we can, you know, offer each other strength and be very, be a polycrop rather than a monocrop. The next slide, please. So I also wanted to look at infrastructures of process and product. So we have a lot more ground up initiatives and also state initiatives that are attempting to resist a culture of overwork and overproduction. So a lot in the past, I think a lot of artists will focus on producing and hitting the box office and hitting their key product indicators, and realizing that it was a very unsustainable way to do work, that work became more mediocre. And now artists have become increasingly more interested in longer term processes, especially when it comes to working with communities. So there's a lot more focus now on incubation spaces and residencies. And because, like I mentioned, that rent has become so expensive in the state, it also means that artists are looking for different approaches to space and labor, including models like co-ops, circular economies, where, you know, you may offer a venue and then I offer you something back in return rather than money, or doing work in more unconventional or far-flung locations. So maybe sharing a space with other non-arts people and mixed-use residences instead. What's also very exciting, and I'm going to focus a bit more on this slide, is that there's a lot more ground up and producing and developmental support for local artists within regional networks, including producers SG, Mindulus Group, the new platform Currency, and 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀. So on the screen, you'll see two images. One is Nusantara Open Circle. It it grew out of this very informal group of playwrights who started meeting a few years ago, because they were all writing across the Malay and English language and really wanted a space to share their drafts and their scripts and get feedback and learn from each other. So as this kind of community of practice grew, their excitement for new work also spread to the region, and now they're partnering with the Esplanade to run something called Nusantara Open Circle to do script readings and script development from all the Malay speaking and Malay writing countries in the region. So that's ongoing. And then we also have the 𝗪𝗁𝗂𝗃 Fellowship. So 𝗪𝗁𝗂𝗃 was a former critical writing site. It's actually where I met 𝗪𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗃 a few years ago because we were part of the Asian Arts Media Roundtable that they organized. They have pivoted somewhat to look at how they can disperse grants to support mid-career artists in the region. And because they found that mid-career artists receive substantially less support than early career and established artists. So this is a way for, I think, a lot of mid-career artists from across the region, whether from Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, to find a community of peers and also meet each other at some point. So I was on the fellowship last year, and a group of us got to meet in Taiwan at Taiwan Week at their International Arts Festival earlier this year, which was really nourishing for us to compare the ways in which we operate across different contexts. Next slide, please. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the inter or the in-between. Next slide, please. So as a prefix, inter can mean between or among, but also suggests something that's mutual, something that's reciprocal. And I really enjoy this concept in a lot of artworks I see emerging out of Singapore today that often falls between gaps. They can't really be categorized as specific art forms or specific disciplines, and they also don't really adhere necessarily to certain language streams. So if you see the image on the slide here, this is a scene from Rata Orchestra, a flat orchestra created by an incredible sound designer and composer called Safwan Johari, who also goes by the name Max Lane in Singapore. He was trying to imagine what would it be like if instead of a hierarchical classic Western orchestra, we could re-envision an orchestra as a flat one. And so he invited a lot of contemporary and classical musicians from across Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, including Nova Ruth of the Arca Kinari in Indonesia, for example, to think about how an orchestra could work in kind of a flat, networked sort of way. And it was a really exciting collaboration to see. You can see all the audience is standing on the floor and moving. They had the freedom to kind of move through this orchestra where a musician might pick up a certain motif in one side of the room, and then another musician on the other side of the room might pick up that melodic motif and bring it in another direction. And you get this beautiful groundswell of music from all different forms vibrating through the floor of this space. And it was quite a magical encounter. And I think I'm really drawn to this way of collaborative and collective art making in Singapore that desires to rethink the ways in which art processes have to be followed or done a certain way. We can go to the next slide, please. To me, this is quite an archipelagic disposition. When you're in an archipelago traveling from island to island, it's often difficult to tell, are you approaching an island from this direction or from another direction? And these islands often take different shapes depending on how you are orienting or traveling towards them. And Southeast Asia, as Fashali mentioned, is quite an unwieldy set of sites and people. We all speak different languages. We all have very fractured and different histories. Archipelagic Southeast Asia is very different from mainland Southeast Asia, upland Southeast Asia. And I was very intrigued by this paragraph produced by Charlene Rajendran, who's a dramaturg and scholar from Malaysia, and Marcus Tan, who's a scholar from Singapore, who wrote about this in Performing Southeast Asia, which is an academic text. And they write, Southeast Asia as a geopolitical entity or cartographic concept is, to reiterate Benedict Anderson's pertinent thesis, an imagined community. Though one may contest the use of the term chaos, Southeast Asia's extreme diversity of ethnicities, cultures, religious beliefs, and political affiliations have frequently resulted in difficult attempts at interpolating a common identity for the region. The sea, then, is arguably then the common imaginary that has given the region a political will to power and unitary self-image. It is the bodies of water that divide but also unite. The sea separates but also adjoins us. So I think it's such a beautiful metaphor across Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia to think of the sea as a place that unites all of our different sites, air to our tanah. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is my final section on intimacy. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. Okay, so in Singapore, the performing arts scene is a really tiny community where everyone tends to know each other. But even though it's a small community, it has big feelings. And I think being in a very intimate community means that you, you navigate challenges and ruptures in a very different way than, for example, a sprawling place of 250 million might. So in Singapore today, I think there are a lot of tensions between formalizing career trajectories in the creative industries, but also leaving room for a lot of non-conforming journeys of art making. There are a lot of tensions between the artists as, being kind of a resistant fourth estate, someone who holds power to account, but also someone who is very reliant on the state for funding and, seeing art as instrumentalized by state narratives. We see a lot of tensions between producing art that addresses political urgencies, but also, that artists have to seek out ways of remaining financially stable. So how to reconcile an artist's activist instincts with the daily precarity of their day-to-day lives and putting food on the table. We have tensions between Singapore as a very rich, very affluent arts funder in the region and its economic asymmetry with other countries, and also artists who are very low wage. I think in a recent survey of income, artists tends to be right at the bottom. And then we have tensions between needing to recoup our ticket sales, our box offices, our KPIs, but also sustaining our own, creative stamina and creative experimentation by taking it a lot slower. Because the scene is so small, sometimes when harm is done, when ruptures happen, it is also very difficult to report harm and to repair these structures. And also, I think something they're facing at the moment, as one generation of contemporary arts makers gets a bit older, we're seeing a lot of tensions around organizational succession. How do we build strong ways of leadership succession in our groups and organizations, and what a future arts leadership might look like that might be quite different from the one that came before. The next slide is my final one. So I guess I'm offering all of these observations as someone who has been following and accompanying the scene for the past 15 years. And while I think often in many places the critic is seen as being antagonistic, or always being very resistant to performance, I really think that criticism is a form of care work and that we do it because we love the industry so much. That to be a critic means that you journey between artist and audience over time. And it's a really long-term commitment that responds to kind of this development of relationships over time. And to me, being the good critic or being the good citizen is to be attentive to my community and to journey with them and build a world that we didn't think possible otherwise. And I draw a lot from the work of the political theorist John Tronto, which suggests that caring for something means reaching out to something other than yourself, and that therefore a caring criticism suggests that it will lead to other kinds of action instead of just sitting there and watching things happen. I believe that what caring looks like will be very different in every context, and also that a caring criticism is ongoing. And I hope to continue to put a lot more performances in my own archive of viewing and watching theater and dance in the future. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you so much. This is how to reach me. You can also pop that in the chat if that's more helpful. And I'm looking forward to the questions and discussions after this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kari. Now that all of our presenters have presented, we will open the Q&A session. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. And if there are questions to type, you can head to the chat box. Don't forget to include your name, your group or institution or university name, country of origin, and to whom your question is directed to. Okay, maybe we'll start with the first question here from 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗃 from Asawara to John Moko. She said, they said, I like the idea of intercultural or the fusion of culture during performance, but what will happen to the identity of the culture? So, Mr. Jonet, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Nisa. Okay, and thank you, Safik, for the questions. I find it really interesting and intriguing because it will take us to a broader context of what happens in the field through the idea of intercultural. First of all, I would like to elaborate a bit more with the intercultural in the context of Indonesia itself. So in the 70s, for example, Indonesian theater, the work of 𝗏𝗏 Theater, he adapted Hamlet, Shakespeare Hamlet, with different contexts of Indonesia through, for example, using batik as an outfit. And of course, there's something that quite new in that era, and it really provocative. But at the same time, it brings us to a different level of intercultural conversation. And some critics will say that kind of work will be considered as inter-high cultural because it's an encounter between two big canon, meaning Hamlet, Shakespeare's, and batik themselves. So from that kind of example, I will talk more about the idea of intercultural itself is a really intentional attempt to put our own culture into a conversation, deep conversation with other cultures. Meaning, in that sense, we assume that we want to really embrace the development of the culture itself into broader and complex practice into our life. In that sense, I would say that to some extent, we can also really think deeply about, we know more about cultural appropriation, for example, that will be another issue. But your question really need to be contextualized in different case because it will bring a different perspective from every case regarding to who do the intercultural context themselves and who perceive that kind of project and who will all benefits from the intercultural. I think as an idea of shared heritage, for example, as a practice of intercultural, we assume, as Corey just mentioned, reciprocal and mutual conversation among the parties that get involved in the collaborations. So the identity of culture, of course, will be developed, and that's, I just want to underline, that's, to me, that's the intention why we do the intercultural project, just to make the culture themselves to be more developed and to encounter different culture. I think that's all. Hopefully it responds your questions. I give it back to you, Nisa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. I think that's also very much connected to the topic on collaboration, question on what do we mean by intercultural collaboration, is it who is doing it? So I think it's a very insightful point. We have another question here. Oh, it's still from 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗃. Okay, we're still waiting for new questions in the chat box. Or if anybody wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand and turn your mic on. Do you have any questions?
That's a new question.
Oh, okay. Another question to Ms. Corey Tan. So still from 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗃, they said, I like the idea of the intercultural or the fusion of culture during performance, but what will happen to the identity of the culture that we inherit? Will it be compromised? I think this is quite similar, where we have an additional point maybe at the end on will it be compromised? Maybe Ms. Corey Tan, would you like to add your thoughts?
Sure. I really appreciate what Jonette shared, and I completely agree with what he mentioned. I do think culture is never static. I think even if we trace, culture back 200 years, it is always necessarily in contact with other people, communities, and movements. Like, there's no way to preserve a culture in a vacuum, because it will always be part of a context zone, which is a concept created by the Professor Mary Louise Pratt, to talk about the ways in which something is shaped or molded and comes out anew. So I think I like to think of the ways in which we practice culture and do culture as more as in an ecosystem. So there will be groups that adhere quite closely to certain lineages of practicing classical or traditional work, and that's amazing. And then we also have other people who are interested in how these traditions are translated or developed or rub up against other forms. And I think we need both. Yeah, so that's what I would add.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw somebody raising their hand. Was it Ms. 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗧? Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. I raised my hands, but I also put my question in the chat. So the hypothesis put forward by this project between UNESCO and Temasek Foundation is that the collaboration, intercultural dialogue, co-creations based on shared heritage will be the strategy to advance the career of the performing artists in the regions. So this is what we put in our project document as our hypothesis and the theory of change. But I wish to seek a candid view from our street experts if you agree that this is the case. Was my question clear?
Yeah.
Yes. Any of the speakers would like to respond?
I can start if you want.
Okay, to Mr. Jonette.
Thank you for the questions. This is really intriguing as well as during the other presenters I talked to Nana was from UNESCO Indonesia, how we try to put shared heritage not only part of cultural practice as a form, but also as a perspective. So through the shared culture, we try to dive into the broader knowledge transmission and production, be it from the form, be it from the historical aspect, be it from the perspective of the artist, be it from everything that embedded in the shared heritage itself. So to me, it's also something that quite contributive, I would say, to the whole scene of the art making and art practice. As long as we try to put the stakeholders as significant players, and in my presentation, I underline the role of the artist in this context. And this is not something new in Indonesia context. I just mentioned about Indonesia Bertutur, whose project surely really embraced the culture and heritage to be part of the contemporary artistic practice. In that sense, form is one thing, but the perspective embedded in the heritage themselves is also something that we need to explore, and that's something that will put forward the practice itself. Hopefully that responds your question.
Okay.
Maybe I can add as well. I think it's ambitious and a goal to think about shared heritage as a way of guiding these collaborations. But what I would say is that whenever I see people commissioning intercultural or interdisciplinary collaborations, it's like saying, I want to aim for happiness. My goal is I want to be happy. And how can I be happy? I'm going to put all these people in a room and we're going to try and be happy together. And often I feel that when we try to aim directly at, I want to create an intercultural and interdisciplinary performance, it never works because it requires quite a complex set and a long runway of artists and collaborators getting to know each other, understanding each other's priorities, challenges, hindrances. And it's rarely kind of a linear process or to arrive at a specific goal. I think the most often when we see, or I have seen commissions where they're like, oh, let's put this group with that group and they both seem interesting. Let's see whether they can come up with an intercultural performance together. It often feels very tokenistic and reductive. People are just like, oh, I guess this is my, this is something that's is a symbol of my art form. I'm going to put it here. And the most exciting ones I see are those that maybe span years, right? And may look very unproductive at the start, but requires that kind of deep groundwork and mutual understanding and mutual sensing, and often failure or periods of lying fallow, taking breaks from each other, to really create something that exemplifies the ethos and the aesthetics of all parties. So I think while it's a lofty and needed goal, I'd be curious about how we steward these processes of shared heritage together. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably, if I may add, I couldn't agree more with Corey. But I think the intercultural collaboration is not will be the right way. But I think it's one of the way that we can pursue this objective. I think from the history, we also we can look how past artists that continue that already started to collaborate between different ethnic group, different culture, and I think it's a very natural in this archipelago that we continue to talk with each other, maybe not in terms of making arts or to try understanding of others' culture, but also in the economic terms, in the politics. So we always have this kind of reciprocal understanding about each other, and of course, not all end in a better term, but what I say is this is part of our in our gene as a maritime society, that we always connect with each other. But then I think this platform is one of the way, but not, I wouldn't say this not just the right way. So there's many other way that we can have this kind of conversation. I think this, in the grassroots level, we as an artist, and I think some of the panels here also work not just in the platform, but also continue to have a conversation with each other. Like me and Corey and Jonette, we still continue to talk and communicate, and sometimes we go to each other's country to support the festival, to meet and to discuss. And that's, I think, the intercultural thing. When we come, we see, we talk, we discuss, and we share, and then make us have more understanding about other culture, and try to incorporate and respect in our work, if you want to put it in our work. So we not just like come, oh, this is Randai, I want to bring it back to Malaysia, to KL, and then do it in our own, without acknowledging the origin of the culture. So of course, this is, like I said, this is one of the way, but not necessarily the right way. So there's many other ways.
Yeah, I totally agree, Fashali. Just to add very quickly, I think what's most helpful is often if funders can support, already ongoing organic processes that have already taken shape. So for example, something like, I'm a journalist as well, so I was thinking about the Asia Arts Media Roundtable is a platform that has already produced really deep and thick and long-lasting relationships between different countries and different sites. And of these people, a lot of, practitioners have already started building relationships with each other and creating their own projects based around that shared heritage in the region. And so it would be interesting for organizations to identify what's already happening and support, those already organic modes of connection. So that's something I would see. And I think also shared heritage is not the only thing that interests me. I'm also interested in how a certain heritage is interpreted vastly differently across Indonesian, Singaporean, and Malaysian sites, right? We may all have the same lingua franca with bahasa Malaysia, bahasa Indonesia, but there are also so many ways in which this shared heritage has been distributed or dispersed across our sites that are very interesting points of embarkation for creation and making. So that's also something that's really interesting. Okay, I'll stop there.
Okay, hopefully that question has been heard clearly. We also have some audience who raised their hand. The first one will be Siti Dharma. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Hello, hi.
Okay, Siti Dharma, please share your question.
Yeah, okay. I'm a student from Aswara. I have two questions about Randai. How does UNESCO view the potential of Randai as an intangible culture heritage to serve as a platform for a culture diplomacy among Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, given that these three countries share the common cultural roots? And the second question is, what form of support or initiative can UNESCO provide to ensure the Randai remains relevant to the younger generation in all three countries while preserving its traditional values and at the same time expanding space for the innovation in these performing arts? Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to answer the question directly?
Okay, shall I respond?
Yes.
Okay, on the first question, okay, UNESCO does not have a formal view on Randai as such. Okay, having said this, we believe that all intangible cultural heritage is inherently intercultural, because not, as Corey mentioned, no tradition exists in vacuum. A tradition is often the result of so many exchanges of knowledge. So as such, yes, we believe that Randai, as one of many other traditions in the region, could be a good platform for intercultural dialogue and cultural diplomacy among the three countries and beyond. And this is not just about Randai. Any traditions, many of them would be actually the platform for cultural diplomacy. And then UNESCO prefers and wishes that they use cultural tradition as a platform for intercultural dialogue and mutual respect, rather than a domain of fight over the exclusive ownership and nationalism. On the second question on what could be UNESCO support to keep Randai relevant while respecting the traditions. Now, first and foremost, the most important thing is that this action should be formulated by the community practicing Randai. UNESCO cannot tell what should be the activities. The communities themselves have to tell us how they want to see their traditions evolve, right? So that, and what they think are the critical factors that need to be maintained so that the Randai will not be totally distorted or totally kind of change its format. So this discussion has to happen within the community first. Only then we'll be able to, let's say an international organization, an external body like UNESCO can intervene and offer some kind of collaboration. And for information, our support is not usually monetary. Well, our offer is more to steer the interagency kind of dialogue between the ministries, or between ministry and the communities, or between the countries. So this is a kind of support we can offer if there's anything that Randai community wants to do. I hope this responds to City's question.
Okay, yeah, hopefully the question is answered. We also have another who just raised their hand. I think I saw Anna. Did Anna would like to out and ask? Okay, if not, maybe we'll go to 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗃, who also raised their hand. Would you like to unmute and ask?
Yeah, hello. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a student from Aswara, from Faculty of Film. I just want to ask you about any panel who can answer me. Sometimes this culture thing gives us some kind of ego for our own identity or something like that. And sometimes we can a little bit, it's hard for us to like teach other people. It feel like we giving our identity to other people. So I just want to ask you, is culture is actually kind of thing that separates us, or actually it's kind of like we can be like together about this thing? Does it unite us as a human, or does it actually departing us as a people who have their own identity? Just that, because sometimes you go to the native place, you know, they feel like, I have my own tribe, I have my own culture. It separates us. But as a human, actually, the culture should be some kind of identity. So I just want to know what kind of mentality should be set as we as an art student, or as the one that inherits any identity or art. That's all.
Okay, thank you for the question. Any of the speakers would like to respond to that?
Maybe I can start.
Yes,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if I can speak or talk about the context of Malaysia as a Malaysian. Of course, Malay is a majority, and sometimes we have also, and proud of our identity as a Malay, and of course we have other ethnic group in Malaysia. And I think this idea of our identity is superior than the other is very colonial way of thinking, that we should not continue in this legacy. We are not like that. I think as a Malays, we are very democratic citizen. Back in our old days in Malacca. Malacca is not gonna be like the Malacca we know now if the Malay at that time is not like welcoming all these other people come to Malacca to do business. So I think that identity that we should continue, that value that we should continue up until now. As an artist as well, that is very important. So when of course we try to embrace our identity and also to embrace others' identity. So how then we come together as an artist, not to put so much of our power to impose to the other group, and your culture should should follow my culture, or so I think this kind of platform teach us that we should embrace, know, learn from each other, and we are not come to your culture, to other culture, and say your culture is different, my culture is different, and my culture is better than your culture. So that is not what we should do as an artist. So we must know that kind of mentality is very colonial mentality that we should not continue. So as a Malaysian, we should embrace our other culture as an art student. So then how we can perceive and look at other culture as a good value that we can embrace as well in our culture. And I think we are on a good track at the moment, not just in Malaysia, but also in the region. That's why I think Southeast Asia community is the most peaceful region in the world. We don't fight with each other. Even we have different culture, different language, different religion. We are at peace. Of course, there's a small conflict here and there, but that everything is in control. So that's the value that we should embrace and continue. Thank you.
Thanks, 𝗏𝗏𝗧. I just want to add very quickly. I think culture as a term is very complicated. When we think of culture, do you mean racial culture? Do you mean ethnic culture? Do you mean linguistic culture? Do you mean religious culture, food culture? There are many ways in which we can gloss this term culture. Culture can be internally expressed, right? You can have your personal culture identity that you hold very strongly to, or like 𝗏𝗏𝗧 said in post-colonial terms, it can be externally imposed, right? The British categorize us in different ways. This is your culture, that's your culture. And it can also be in after independence, naturally imposed, on my identification card, it says that I'm Chinese, right? And it reduces this identity to just one word, right? Even though within that term Chinese itself, we speak all different kinds of languages and come from all different parts of the Sinophone world. So culture is quite a loaded term, and I would, kind of want to unpack that a little bit. But I think what's exciting for me is the ways in which we can navigate and negotiate both, kind of top-down or ground-up or externally or internally imposed notions of culture within the arts as a process. I think because in art forms, we have rehearsal spaces, we have long processes, we have incubation periods. These are amazing places, whether in the classroom, rehearsal studio, on stage, for us to come together as a collective and really communally make sense of what these competing or contesting or shared notions of culture are. So that's what I would add to 𝗏𝗏𝗧's already really, I think, excellent summary of the situation.
Thank you so much. I think Mr. Jonat also would like to add a response.
Just quickly to respond. What have been overlooked within the conversation of intercultural or cultural or shared heritage, for example, sometimes it's also about power relation or game. And to me, it's also important to understand. To me, myself, for example, I consider myself really open to share culture, intercultural connection. But at the same time, I know that culture, whatever it means that 𝗏𝗏𝗧 just mentioned, is also lived and embodied and acted within the communities. So that specific aspect, of course, created a different tension within the intercultural project. Not to mention, there's also, as I mentioned, power relations connected to the economics asymmetry, as Corey mentioned earlier. So to me, it's more complicated when it comes to the practice, but it's the idea. I would say, like so many art forms that we have now, is part of intercultural. And then it's now institutionalized in different model of practice right now. So if we try to institutionalize different practice of the intercultural in the future, that's something that we need to embrace and acknowledge and negotiate within this kind of conversation with the power game and with the power relations. And at the same time, we do believe that this is something that certain community have been acting, embodying, experiencing for a long time. And that's something that quite evident in so many cases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jonet. I see that we have a question from Alina Muhtanis, which I think is also responded by the previous responses. So they asked about the potential conflict that could come up in the wider public in terms of who owns a certain culture and how these intercultural collaborations can affect these kind of arguments. And I think that is somewhat connected to what this talked about on, notions of superiority and nationalism on cultures and power games within these regions. Maybe anybody would like to add your thoughts on this question? So they asked about social media disputes, for example, on who 𝗪𝗡 belongs to, so this idea of ownership and culture and how it has tension on this idea of shared heritage.
And then what is the question?
Yeah, I think, can I try? Maybe just a short answer.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is the sensational topic over the internet. But if we go on the ground and talk with the people, they do not talk about this. So the media, the social media, amplified this issue. But I think when we go to each other's country, we just eat and embrace all these hybrid things that we do not maybe try to argue with the local that this is. I do not go to Singapore. This nasi lemak is Malaysian. You should not sell this. No, but we just come and eat and embrace. And maybe if we feel like they not delicious, then that's it. But I don't think that this issue of the belonging, like batik is belong to Indonesia or Malaysia. Nasi lemak is belong to rendang belong to Indonesia or Malaysia. So this only the social media is amplify this issue, but not really on the ground. So we don't. I don't see any Indonesian friends talk about this with me and argue about this. So yeah, that's my short answer, and I don't wanna continue talking about this. And yeah.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add a response?
Yeah, I would say that's also something that will remind us the previous point that I mentioned earlier, and the way we try to understand that specific culture might be experienced and acted and performed in a specific community. And that's back again in power games, like in power relations, like who recreate that, what for, and what kind of benefit they share. So is that coming to the community that based on everyday life really commit to this kind of culture? So I think this it's not really something that we cannot ignore, but at the same time it is something that help us to navigate this kind of intercultural project if we want to admit it. Thank you.
Okay. I think, do we have... Okay, so for the last question from Ali Al-Lasri, a question for the panel. So they said, could you elaborate a bit on the ongoing trend of commodification of culture? What is the position of performing arts today and cultural practices in the growing creative economy interest across Southeast Asia? Any of us like to respond to that? So maybe the position of performing arts today and cultural practices in the midst of the growing creative economy interest.
Maybe I can respond really quickly.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think this is inevitable, given the current system we operate under, that art is often thought of productions that travel on a circuit, that are offered up to people for consumption. And that is, I guess, the way people are accustomed to working. And I don't think we can dismantle that overnight. At the same time, what I find very encouraging is that, we used to have a lot of these regional art markets, right? That were like, oh, everyone, all these producers, bring your shows to these festivals and see who will buy them, who will stage them. And over the years, these have been reshaped as people will realize that, okay, we want to shift cultural production away from this model of always selling artwork as commodities, and have been restyled more as gatherings and meeting points, and really thinking about programming and curation of work more thoughtfully. Is this a piece of work that is relevant and necessary in my context for this time? So I really appreciated smaller scale gatherings such as the Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting, which really feels like a gathering for Southeast Asian artists and producers, where we encounter work from our peers across Southeast Asia. It happens once every 2 years. And often the work that is staged, people are like, I would love to see this travel to my country so that we can have a collective conversation across borders about how, say, something like damming and environmental destruction on the Mekong River has an impact in Singapore, for example. So I would love to see more circulations of artwork move in that direction. But I think because, let's say, in Western European sectors and festivals, such as on the West End or Broadway, there's still such a heavy fetishization of Asian art and what that's supposed to look like. Because of these power asymmetries, that's still hard to shake at the moment. But I'm just encouraged by the other more independent, smaller scale movements that are appearing, in opposition to that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kuritan. Anybody would like to add some thoughts? Okay, maybe because of the time, I'd like to wrap up this discussion session. So we see that there are concerns connected to this topic on intercultural collaboration, such as nationalism, the idea of the superiority of culture and power games within Southeast Asia. And this is very much connected to the question of who and how intercultural collaboration is done. And it needs to be done with the idea that at the end of the day, collaboration, mutuality, reciprocity, and development of the culture should be something that is important in this collaboration, and it can be done through funding existing initiative, not making it as the main ultimate goal, but something as seen connected to as like values. And this is exactly what UNESCO is trying to do by funding dialogues and exchanges to support this collaboration. Okay, next we're going to move to quiz to have a little time and fun. So we will play Mentimeter. Please click on the quiz link in the chat box, and on the screen participants can join with the code. We also have a QR code that you can scan on the screen. Okay. Okay, we're going to wait for more participants to join. Hopefully this quiz will lift in our mood. It will be a time to refresh ourselves after the talk and discussion. Also, if anybody would like to share your thoughts on the discussion we had, please feel free to put them in the chat box so people can continue to look at responses to the discussion. Okay, maybe can we look at how many people have joined in the matter? Okay, we're still waiting for players. Wow, we've got 32 players ready. Maybe we'll wait for a little more people to join in. The link is in the chat box once again. Okay, we've got 35 players, 7. Okay, I think we'll just wait. If some people are still joining, we'll wait until nobody joins, and then we'll start. Okay, sweet. I think we're starting. We've got 45, 40. Okay. The number is still, okay. Cool. Okay, we're going to start. 50 players in total. The others can still join. Okay. The quicker you answer, the more points you get. So we'll go to the first question. The following are example of proto-theater in Malaysia. Is it 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀, 𝗪𝗲𝗏, or 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗏𝗀? We've got 7 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. And the answer is, let's see. The correct answer is 𝗪𝗏 with all 6 correct answers. Okay, we will move to the next one. Oh, let's look at the leaderboard. We have 𝗧𝗵𝗍 with 925 points. Okay. We'll move to the next one. The others can still answer quickly to get more points. Okay, question 2. We've got 50 players ready. Okay. There are forms of dance in Southeast Asia created through localization, except makyong, legong, opera. We've got 10 seconds. Wow, answers are coming in quickly. 2, 1. The answer is opera, and we've got 36 correct respondents. Very encouraging. A lot more encouraging than the previous one. Okay, let's look at the leader. Did that just change drastically? It did. Okay. Congratulations, Sakura, for being the first on the second question. We'll move to the next one. Okay, how many players do we have here? We have 60 players. Wow, a lot more than the previous one. Okay, let's go to the question. Okay, Rauna is a performance about. We've got 10 seconds. Is it heritage, Borobudur, the Ganga River? Okay, 3 seconds. 2, 1. Let's check. The correct answer is heritage, and we've got 27 respondents answering correctly. Let's look at the leaderboard. Okay. Did it change here drastically? Look, it would. Oh, Sakura is still the first. Okay, but we've seen some changes. Okay, next question. Yep. Okay, we're still waiting. Okay, this is the last question. Got 60 players. Remember, the quicker you answer, the more points you will get. Let's look at the question. This is your last chance to change the leaderboard. Okay, who was a key figure in modern Malaysian during the 1950s and 1980s? Is it 𝗪𝗠𝗋𝗋, Fazila Hussein, or Zakaria Arifin? 10 seconds. Wow, answers are coming in very quickly. 3, 2, 1. Let's check. Okay. The correct answer is 𝗪𝗠𝗋𝗋 with 14 respondents answering correctly. Okay, I think we will find out who will be the winner. Let's check how the leaderboard has changed. Wow, Eka Wahyuni is going in very quickly. Waswara. Let's look at the final result. Okay, we've got our winners, I think. Okay. Okay, is this... Oh, we still have one more question. Surprise. Yeah, more chance for the other. In just one word, what's your hope for the future of performing arts? This is a very open question. Okay, put in your responses. You can put in a word. Is it first one? Blossoming, first, connection, sustainable, good luck. 𝗪𝗫𝗪𝗀. Liberation, open-minded landscape. Okay, we've got more words coming in. Please share your thoughts. Sustainable, that's a big one. A lot of people put that in. And amazing. Money more. More colorful, diversity and equity. We should be united. Good, futuristic. Okay, do we have more words coming in? Okay. Diversity is now getting bigger. Connection, that's an important point with intercultural collaboration. Rich, innovation, communicate, interconnected. It connects with what Dr. Teritan mentioned on inter. Economic impact. Okay, we've got lots of words. Amazing is getting bigger. Platform is now a noticeable word. Disney in Malaysia. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Fulfilling. Discipline. Netflix. Interesting. Is this culture and commodification connected with what somebody said in the Q&A session? Okay, cool. And now let's look at our winner. Oh, I think people do points from putting in the words. Let's look at our top 3 winners. Okay, first one was from Aswara. Congratulations, 2,757 points. Do I have a next winner? We've got applause coming in. Thank you very much, all respondents. Okay, I think that's our first winner. That would be the only winner from our quiz. That's very fun. Thank you so much for participating, and for everybody who has joined in this session. Don't worry, we'll have more activities in the next one. So now we will conclude the kickoff program event, in which we have spent approximately 3 hours together. And we hope that through this time of gathering, networking, and sharing new insights, we've gained meaningful experiences and positive value to continue growing. As I mentioned earlier, this program will continue with the next series, which is a public webinar, which is planned to be at the end of October. Further details will be announced soon by the ARS Management Indonesia team, ERTI Research Collective Malaysia, and NAFA Singapore. Once again, thank you so much for our speakers and all the attendants. I'm 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀, your host and moderator, signing off. Thank you very much. See you at the next event.